Here's the truth no one tells you about self-discovery. It comes at a cost, and sometimes it's steep. People romanticize it like it's this noble path, choosing growth over comfort, clarity over confusion. But what they don't mention is that sometimes finding yourself means walking away from the one person who loved you exactly as you were. I'm MIA, and this is the story of how I let go of the best man I've ever known while clutching a bag full of cliches and not an ounce of real insight. Ethan and I were steady. That's the word. We weren't dramatic or wildly passionate. We were grounded, real, dependable. We met in college, spent 6 years together, and shared a home for 4 of those. Our lives intertwined so completely we split everything: grocery bills, streaming passwords, Sunday morning rituals. I thought that sense of stability was love. And maybe it was. But comfort starts to feel unremarkable when you're surrounded by people who glorify chaos. My social feed was a parade of whirlwind romances, Bali getaways, and breakups rebranded as personal glow-ups. My best friend Tasha had just left a long-term relationship and seemed reborn. Pole dancing, performing spoken word, thriving. Meanwhile, I started feeling stuck. Ethan hadn't changed. He was still the thoughtful guy who packed my lunch when I worked late and remembered my cycle better than I did. But somewhere in the haze of influence and envy, his gestures stopped feeling sweet and started to feel suffocating. It's cringe to admit, but it all unraveled during a wine-heavy night with Tasha and her squad of newly single sages. They were sharing horror stories and life lessons from their chaotic dating adventures, and I just sat there, sipping, smiling, nodding, unable to relate. Then someone asked how long Ethan and I had been together. 6 years, I said. The room paused, a beat of silence. Then someone chimed in. Girl, how do you even know who you are if you've never been alone? We all laughed, but the question lodged itself deep in my brain. I couldn't shake it. Suddenly I was Googling solo travel blogs, binge-watching minimalist apartment tours, scribbling journal entries like I was prepping for a TEDx talk. I convinced myself I needed distance, not because anything was wrong, but because I wasn't sure who I was outside of being Ethan's partner. So, one evening, I sat him down on our wobbly IKEA couch, the one we assembled together and almost broke up over, and I told him the dumbest thing I've ever said. I think I need to find myself, I whispered, as if that made it noble rather than selfish. He blinked. Find yourself. Where? I don't know, I said. I've just never been by myself. I need to understand who I am without us. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't beg. He just looked at me like he didn't recognize the person sitting across from him. And I hated that. Hated how calm he was, how ready he was to let me go. He asked if there was someone else. There wasn't. Not in body, but maybe in idea. There was this idealized version of me I thought I had to become, and she didn't include him. We talked for hours, or argued. Maybe. It's all a blur now. I remember crying. I remember him saying, I love you, but I'm not going to fight a fantasy. And I remember walking away, suitcase in hand, convinced I'd return once I had all the answers. But Ethan didn't wait. I crashed with Tasha for a few nights, buzzed on the thrill of supposed independence. I posted corny quotes to my stories like, sometimes you have to let go of the good to find the great. I really believed I was doing something courageous. By day 3, the cracks started to show. Tasha's place was cramped. Her empowered routine didn't include dishes or boundaries. I missed the quiet. I missed Ethan's cologne lingering on our sheets. I missed being asked about my day, and someone actually listening. By day 5, I decided to pick up a few things from the apartment. I hadn't heard from Ethan, but I figured he was giving me space. I still had my key, except it didn't work anymore. I stood on the front steps, fiddling with the lock like an idiot, telling myself it was just jammed. That's when Mrs. Alvarez, our upstairs neighbor, leaned over her railing and said, Sweetheart, the locksmith came yesterday. Said he needed to change a few things. My heart dropped. I texted Ethan, nothing. Called, voicemail. Eventually, he replied, "You can get your stuff Saturday between 3 and 5. I won't be there." That was it. No small talk. No attempt to reconnect. Just a 2-hour window to collect the fragments of a life I'd walked away from. I sat on the curb until my phone died, sobbing quietly into my sleeves. That's when it hit me. Ethan wasn't waiting for some grand epiphany. He wasn't holding space for my return. He was done. When I returned that Saturday, the place looked smaller. Or maybe I just felt that way. My boxes were stacked neatly by the door. The photos? Gone. It was like I'd never been there. But what gutted me most were the tiny signs that someone new had already arrived. A mug I didn't recognize. A scarf I'd never seen, lazily draped over the couch we once argued over. I stood there, picturing another woman sipping coffee in my kitchen, hearing his laugh, getting the version of Ethan I threw away for an illusion. I wanted to fall to my knees, to apologize, to beg. But I didn't. I just left, carrying cardboard boxes and the weight of my mistakes. 6 months later, I live in a tiny apartment where the walls are thin and the windows rattle in the wind. I have my so-called freedom. I've gone on dates. I've posted thirst traps. I've ticked all the boxes on the Finding Yourself checklist. And most nights, I sit alone with a glass of wine, looking at Ethan's engagement photos. His getting married, not to me, but to someone who didn't have to lose him to realize his worth. And me? I found myself. She turned out to be a girl who mistook comfort for constraint, who thought growing meant breaking something that didn't need fixing. So if you're considering leaving someone just to find yourself, let me save you some time. If you feel safe, seen, and loved, then you're not lost. You're home. Don't burn it all down chasing a version of you that only lives in breakup ballads and TikToks. Because when the locks change, it's not just the door that closes, it's the entire story. And sometimes, there's no second draft.